It's hard to believe, but using just ordinary clay, water and your own hands, you can make an incredibly smooth and shiny sphere at home that might cost you over $100 on eBay. This sphere is called Dorodango, and today we're going to try our hand at this ancient Japanese craft. To get the required soil, I headed into the forest and found the perfect spot with a huge free supply of this natural material. I forgot my little shovel at home, so I had to dig it with a stick instead. Using my hands, I managed to collect an entire bag of brown earth, which I brought back home and spread it out evenly on a large tray to let it dry out. So I wouldn't have to spend a whole century waiting for it to dry, I set up a heat lamp next to it, and with that, the process only took a few hours. Oh, look at what I found here. It's a little underground caterpillar. Stefan, come here. Lunch just came to you on its own. The soil dried out really well, but there were still lots of hard clumps and debris on it, so I grabbed a strainer with a rather big hole and started shifting the dry soil through it, filling the whole room with dust. I crushed the larger chunks of dirt with a spoon and forced them through the mesh. In the end, only rocks and plant roots were left in the strainer. While the tray was filled with fine soil particles, consisting mostly of sand, to make sure the final mixture would be sticky enough, I decided to use some clay, which looks and feels like regular butter when you touch it. At this point, we need a sturdy plastic bag with yellow leaves and a ziplock, allowing it to close up airtight. Pour the soil into the bag, roughly adjusting the amount of material depending on your desired size of the sphere. Then add a chunk of clay and pour about 20 milliliters of water. Squeeze out the air, zip the bag shut and start kneading the mixture so it absorbs the water completely and blends evenly with the clay. Shape it into a rough ball and take it out of the bag. Honestly, I have no idea how I'm supposed to turn this shapeless lump of mud into a perfectly smooth sphere. The next step is to keep squeezing and shifting the ball from hand to hand like you see in the video, to push out any trapped air and force all the particles to stick together for maximum strength. Our ball turned out way too soft because of the high water content. To solve this problem, we rolled it around in dry soil, hoping the dry particles will stick to the surface, soaking up some of the moisture and making the sphere a bit firmer. Next, we need to place the ball on a hard surface and start gently rolling it around. It's really important not to apply too much pressure, otherwise the sphere might deform or crack on the surface. But even if cracks appear, it's not a big deal, because we'll be able to hide them on the next stage. After about 15 minutes of rolling and compacting the sphere structure, we leave it under the towel overnight so it can dry out a bit. Now, we need a sturdy stone mortar or a coffee grinder that you don't mind losing. Put the dry soil inside and grind it up thoroughly to get even finer powder. This finely ground soil is crucial for the next stage. The next morning, I discovered that the ball had become much firmer and felt almost as hard as stone. To keep working on it, we need a container of water and some bottles or any vessel with openings narrower than the diameter of our sphere. Quickly dip the ball in water for a few seconds so the outer layer softens up a bit. Then start rubbing it against the edge of a small deep bowl like this one. The protruding spots of the sphere grind against the rim of the bowl and gradually wear it down, while the excess materials get pushed aside and fill the indentations where it's needed the most. We experimented with a bottle that had a narrower opening, but the wider one worked a little better. Sometimes little roots or fibers might be sticking out of your sphere. It's crucial to remove those with tweezers right at this stage. After about an hour of work, our ball takes on an almost perfect shape, but its surface is still quite rough. This is where the finer powder we prepared earlier comes in handy. We need to sprinkle it generously all over the ball and gently rub it with our fingers so it fills as many tiny gaps and pores as possible. Next, instead of wetting the ball itself, we moisten our bowl. The water from it will gradually transfer to the ball, soaking into the new layers of soil. And it really works! we have to repeat this process until a crust of the finer soil particles forms on the surface. But even that still won't be enough to achieve a perfectly smooth glossy ball. For the best results, we need a large jar of water, which we fill about 1/3 of the way with the soil. The water immediately turns brown because the tiniest soil particles are washed out and remain suspended in the liquid. We have to shake the jar thoroughly so everything mixes well. After that, quickly remove the lid and pour the water along with the floating fine particles into another container, leaving behind all the heavier debris and sand in the original jar. These fine particles will eventually settle to the bottom within a few hours, forming a cloudy sediment like this. Let's pour the sediment onto a small tray. We could leave it to dry for a few days until the water evaporates on its own, but we don't have that much time. So instead, we take a camping gas burner and place the aluminium tray with the sediment over a low flame. After a couple of minutes, the liquid starts to boil and the water evaporates. A dry crater forms in the center of the tray, and the soil cracks just like during the drought in the desert. We're left with large solid chunks of soil, but now we know they're made out of ultra-fine particles and can be easily crushed into an extremely fine powder using a pestle and a mortar. Now we sprinkle this powder onto the slightly damp sphere and begin rubbing this fine soil dust into it. For the final polishing, we're going to use this kind of an egg stand. You can even tell from the sound how incredibly smooth the surface of the sphere has become. The final step is an extended polishing session using a piece of cloth. And this is how my first version of the Dorodango looks. As for me, it turned out great. It actually reminds me of a small version of the moon. But that's not all. The night before, I made 2 more cores and found an extremely fine white powder clay online. Of course, I wanted to make a white sphere. The process was exactly the same as before, except in this case, we sprinkled the sphere with white clay powder. At first, the white clay didn't stick very well onto the surface, but I was persistent and after 40 minutes, I ended up with this beautiful sphere that looks almost like a pearl. And that's the result even without final polishing with a cloth. Then I decided to make an even more unique sphere, for which I needed a large carpenter pencil and a thick granite rod. Using a pair of cutters, I carefully cracked it open to get the graphite inside. After that, with the help of a file, I ground down the graphite to produce a fine powder. Later, I found this thick pencil made entirely of graphite. I wasn't sure if it would work, but I carefully started applying the powder to the next sphere. It seemed to stick surprisingly well, even without any water. After polishing it by hand, I ended up with a beautiful and unusual black graphite Dorodango. I still had a lot of soil left, and I didn't want it to go to waste, so I decided to make a giant Dorodango. After adding water to the bag, I noticed these clumps forming during the mixing process. This was a very good sign, indicating that the amount of water I added was just right. And I just needed to keep kneading until the material could be gathered into one big lump inside the bag. Working with such a large sphere was much harder, my hands got tired much faster, and I was eager to see the result. The next morning the sphere was hardened, and this time I used a large glass to polish it. If I'd known how much time it would take, I might never have started. The surface area of this large sphere was 3 times bigger than the smaller ones I'd made before. The grinding of the hardened outer layer with the edges of the glass took many hours. My hands were exhausted, but the sphere looked incredibly smooth and even. In the end, after an entire day's work, I ended up with this big, impressive and smooth Dorodango. It's hard to believe that you can create such a perfect shape out of ordinary soil without any high-tech tools, using just your hands and ordinary glass. This craft isn't merely about making objects, it's also about a practice of patience, focus and respect for the process.